Welcome to the Rated Rabbi Sports Card Podcast, where sports cards and pop culture meet the 1984 All-Star Game. Why the 84 All-Star Game? Because I was there. And the more I dive into the 1984 All-Star Game, the more I am convinced that all of Western civilization intersects on that fateful day in San Francisco. So I'm collecting an 80 card master set based on the game, all PSA graded. I am very close and very excited to share that moment with you. It is an 80 card master set. Joe DiMaggio is card 1. He's seated in the seats that day. There are 2 players who threw out the first pitch. There are 2 honorary captains. That gives us 5. There are 5 announcers, gives us 10. There are 10 coaches, 5 on each side. American League and National League gives us 20. And the other 60 are the rosters, the players from the American League and the National League. Originally, there are 29 players named to each team. There are 2 injuries, so the rosters swell to 30 per side, giving us a total of 60. Who were those 2 players? 2 injured to participate in the game. In the American League, it was shortstop Alan Trammell, who was replaced by Blue Jay Alfredo Griffin. Even though he was injured, Trammell was there. The person who was too injured or otherwise occupied to participate in the 1984 game was replaced by Fernando Valenzuela. We'll talk about the Fernando exemption in a later episode. The person he replaced was most famously known for the quote that is the title of this episode, episode 7. My favorite word in America is you never know. You never know, of course, famously uttered by the late, great Joaquin Andujar. And you can't tell the story of 1980s baseball without Joaquin Andujar. Andujar pitched 13 years in the big leagues. He went 127 and 118 over those years, a career ERA of 3.58. Not too shabby. He was a 4-time All-Star. He won a Gold Glove. He was a World Series winner, had a World Series ring from those 1982 St. Louis Cardinals. Andujar was born 1952 in San Pedro de Macorís in the Dominican Republic. Doesn't it ever just blow your mind how many ball players come from the DR? And wouldn't it be a killer boys trip to go down for a week to the Dominican Republic and watch Winter League baseball? It's a good idea, right? We just watch ball all the time, eat good food, be amazing. So if you're from the Dominican Republic, there is a 5 times likelier chance that you will be a Major League Baseball player if you play baseball. There are 10 million Dominicans, and there are about 300 million Americans or people from the United States with U.S. citizenship, right? 10 million in the whole country, and yet this year in 2023, there are 171 Dominicans who are on big league rosters on opening day. It's crazy. Think of all the great players. So San Pedro de Macorís is on the eastern edge, and remember the island. It's an island, basically like the eastern 60% of the island is the Dominican Republic, maybe 65, and then the western part of the island is Haiti, and San Pedro de Macorís is way out east, and it's there in 1952 that Andujar is born and grows up just dirt poor, like playing baseball with bricks, kind of. It's a poverty I've never known. It also adds a have to the passion of the players. So yes, the academy is for sure. Yes, the culture for sure. But part of the culture is there is a hunger to make it, because if people counting on you, you can create a better life for your family. And it's a drive I don't think many folks in the US can really understand. I can't understand, just to be honest with myself. So Andujar is drafted in 1969 at age 16, right? You got the whole family riding on your shoulders. You're age 16. Drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. Across the next 6 seasons, he'll go 33-41 through variety of levels in the Reds system. He almost makes the Reds team in spring training of 1975. Andujar is almost, even if he was a 25th man on the roster, he almost is a member of the Big Red Machine. Sparky saw something in him that reminded him of Pedro Borbon, another Dominican ball player, and he thought that maybe some of that magic could work a second time with Andujar. It doesn't. Andujar is sent down, and at the end of the year 1975, he's traded to the Houston Astros, and that's where I first remember him. He makes the big leagues in 76. Spends at least 7 seasons with the Houston Astros. He's a starter. He's a reliever. He does make the All-Star team twice. But Houston never really knew how to use him. They couldn't find a good role. And they also, his mechanics, because there was a lot of movement in him when he pitched, his mechanics were, sometimes she'd really struggle with those. So anyways, in early 1981, Houston makes a trade. They trade him to the St. Louis Cardinals for outfielder Tony Scott. I remember Tony Scott, 1979 Stratomatic outfielder, little glove, could run. So he's traded to the St. Louis Cardinals, and when he's in St. Louis, he actually gets reunited with pitching coach Hub Kittle. And Kittle knew him and had managed him in the Winter League over the years in the Dominican, and knew him since he was really young. So in the absence of I didn't get to Andujar's home life, but he was raised by his grandparents. And Hub Kittle becomes very much like a father figure to him. So going back to that relationship on a daily basis with Hub Kittle, he's also playing under Whitey Herzog, and Andujar finds his stride. Down the stretch in 81, he goes 6-1, and something's working. In 1982, it comes together. 1982, Joaquin Andujar pitches 265 2/3 innings, tops in the major leagues. He wins his last 7 starts, 1.64 ERA down the stretch, finishes 15-10 in the regular season. They go on, they win the East. The Atlanta Braves win in the West. You'll remember that. Giants challenge in 82. Finished 3 out, but knocked the Dodgers out. And that was sweet, sweet, sweet last weekend of the year. Anyway, Braves play the Cardinals. Cardinals lay the smackdown. St. Louis sweeps Atlanta, and Andujar is on the mound for the clincher game 3. They go on to 1982 World Series against, Harvey's Wallbangers, those banging brew crew, Milwaukee Brewers. Remember that team? Remember that World Series? Actually, it was a great series. It goes 7 games, and one of the shiniest shiny stars is Joaquin Andujar, 1982 series. Game 3, he cruises. 7th inning, takes a smash, a one-hopper off the smash off the bat of Ted Simmons. He crumbles to the ground. He has to be carried off the field, if you remember that. Gets the win as Suter comes on in relief to pitch the last 2 innings. The expectation is Andujar is out for the remainder of the series, but somehow he rallies, comes on to pitch in game 7 and is feeling it. Pitches 7 innings. His last, you remember when this is what Andujar used to do. Like, so when he was young, he would get a guy out, he'd go bang, 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 and then holster his gun. Come on, dude. Joaquin Andujar, love that. I think maybe he stopped blowing the smoke off the end of his gun, but he still kept doing the bang, bang thing. And in his last batter, he's facing second baseman Jimmy Gantner. Remember him from the Brewers? And he does the bang thing on Gantner, and Gantner goes off and starts, well, this is a family-friendly show. While we do approve of epaulets, we try not to use epithets. So I try not to bring the profanity to the Rated Rabbi podcast. But Gantner has some choice words for Andujar, and Andujar goes after him. It's like this melee in Game 7 of a World Series. Lee Wire, remember Lee Wire, the umpire, 6'6", 258. The back of Andujar's card says 6'1", 170. I think he's kind of a beefy dude. So let's put him at 190, 200. So Wire has 60 pounds minimum and 6 inches on him, and he's restraining Andujar. So the Cardinals go on to win that World Series. I absolutely remember that series. 1983, he struggles. 1983. So during this time in the 80s, there was a certain kind of supplementation going on in baseball. Again, we're trying to keep this a family-friendly show, but I'd like to sort of leave you with this. There are players whose performances were affected by their usage of such supplements. They were not performance enhancing. They were more mood enhancing, let's say. And although Andujar never testifies in those Pittsburgh trials, he's implicated twice in them. So he struggles in 83, and it would have, the timing, makes a lot of sense. He finishes 6-16 for the 83 Cardinals. Although the season does offer one of my very favorite Andujar quotes. He says, "God is still my amigo, but he must be someplace else. Maybe he's watching the American League." I think that's great, right? 84, he makes a comeback again. He actually is going to win Comeback Player of the Year in 1984. He leads the National League in wins with 20, in shutouts with 4, in complete games with 12, pitches 261.1 innings. He wins a Gold Glove. Of course, we're talking about him because he was elected to the National League All-Star Game. But the coolest of the cool in 1984 for Joaquin Andujar is in the season he homered from both sides of the plate. Andujar, he considered himself a switch hitter, but his switch hitterness was not always based on the handedness of the pitcher. For example, Andujar would bat righty against a right-handed pitcher if it was a pitcher he didn't trust or a guy he might have some beef with. So he wanted to protect his right arm. And then the same thing, if the pitcher was a lefty, he would bat righty unless he trusted the guy, and then he would hit lefty because he could see the ball better from left. He's more of a lefty hitter, apparently. Anyway, Andujar homers from both sides of the plate. You could look this up, by the way. So on the left side of the plate, Andujar calls his shot. They're playing the Atlanta Braves, and the pitcher on the mound is lefty Jeff Dedman. Yeah, must have thought Jeff either couldn't throw hard enough or didn't have beef with them, so he's hitting from that left side of the plate. He walks to the plate, and as he's stepping in, he looks to the Cardinals dugout, his teammates, and then he points to the right field stands with the bases loaded. Come on, Jeff Dedman. I'd have thrown him right at your head, Andujar. Are you kidding me? But Dedman, whatever he is, didn't respond. Andujar goes bomb. He calls his shot, hits a grand slam. You never know. Finishes 4th in the Cy Young Award voting that year. Rick Sutcliffe has to win it. Goes 16-1 after coming over in a trade with the Cleveland Indians, pitching for the Cubs. Remember him down the stretch, 16-1. Oh, man, he was good. Finishing 2nd in the Cy, Dr. K, the 19-year-old phenom. Dwight Gooden, we'll spend a lot of time with Dr. K on this show. Finishing 3rd, I'm not sure he deserved it, but Bruce Sutter. 1985, Joaquin Andujar gets off to a scorching start. First half, he's 15-4. There's an end-of-the-half showdown between the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Diego Padres. Cardinals, Andujar taking the hill against San Diego Padre right-hander Lamar Hoyt. Remember Hoyt, 20-game winner the year before for the White Sox, signs a big free agent deal, comes over for the Padres. And Chowder head Dick Williams decides he's going to have a showdown to determine who the starting pitcher is going to be in the 85 All-Star game. Should it be Andujar, clearly the guy who had the better half and deserved it, or Hoyt, who was okay, but he wasn't having Andujar's season, but he was Williams's guy. And I believe the word for Andujar's response to this bright idea from Williams is he goes apoplectic. He refuses to play ever again in another all-star game, which is a great stance because it turns out he didn't make the all-star team ever again. He made it twice with Houston and twice with the Cardinals, 84 and 85. He goes cold in the second half of 1985 season, goes 6 and 8 in 1985. Cardinals advanced to the World Series after knocking out the LA Dodgers. You'll remember Jack Clark, Tom Niedenfuer on the hill for the Dodgers. Cardinals advanced to the World Series. But again, as he'd struggled in the second half, Andujar struggles in the World Series. Game 3 against the Kansas City Royals, he's lit up. He's bombed. Of course, the series is probably most famously remembered for Don Denkinger's missed call, George Orta, costing the Cardinals the win and giving the Royals a break that they will take full advantage of. And they go on to win Game 7 of the series. Game 7, Whitey Herzog, and I understand, even though Joaquin Andujar was on full rest, he opts to go with John Tudor. And Tudor was dominant in 85, for sure, his best season. They both won 20, but Tudor had the better game, and Tudor had been pitching better. So even though Andujar was on full rest, Game 7, the ball is handed to Tudor, and Tudor gets lit up by the Royals. By the time Andujar enters the game in the fourth, it's 9-0. Everyone's like, it just got ugly. So Andujar lets up a hit, and he gets a walk, and he's John at Denkinger, and then there was another ball, and then then Andujar just goes after Don Denkinger, who's umping behind the plate that night. He bumps Denkinger, of course, gets ejected, gets suspended, and the Kansas City Royals are your 1985 world champions. That's really the best of times for Joaquin Andujar right there, 82, 84, 85. So a timely conversation piece, to be sure. But he'd never be the same. Gets traded in the offseason to the Oakland A's for pitcher Tim Conroy and catcher Mike Heath. For those who are playing Rated Rabbi Scoreboard watching at home, that's the second Mike Heath reference. We're only on episode 7. I have to see how many times I can sneak him in on us. So anyway, he gets traded to the A's. A's are bad. It's kind of just before, right? Like I think Canseco's a rookie in 86 and McGuire in 87 and Weiss in 88, something like that. So they're coming on. The Roosters, because it'll get better, but this is not them. Nevertheless, in 86, he does go 12-7 for the A's. In 1987, he struggles. He has 13 starts. He's dealing with injuries. It's, the wheels are starting to fall off, unfortunately, for Andujar. And by 88, he re-signs with Houston, and he really starts to fade. 1989, he has no major league offers, opts instead to play in a professional senior baseball league, but never ever gets a major league shot. Goes back to San Pedro de Macorís, goes back to the Dominican Republic, where he is so beloved, like really is one of the legends of the country. Recently, in 2015, at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, Pedro Martinez, Juan Marichal, and Joaquin Andujar were all there together. And there was a beautiful quote from Pedro Martinez, and I'd like to share it with you now. This was said, of course, just after Andujar died of complications due to diabetes in 2015. Pedro said, Andujar was in the middle of every dream I had because he was one of the best pitchers we ever had in the Dominican Republic. The words of Pedro Martinez. Before we wrap it up, we haven't even seen any cards today. Let's take a look at three of my favorites. We've got his 78 tops. Love that uni, man. That's the best. Love the old Astro uni like that with that orange hat. Forget about it. Here he is. It's interesting though. You can see the difference between him in 78 and 85. He fills out a ton. He's 82. I chose 82 because man, I love those starter jackets. I wish I had one. And then 85, 84, because that's part of the master set. And you can see kind of he fills out like his kind of barrel chested, thick, muscular torso, arms and shoulders and legs. Like he really like becomes a man. He fills out and he was good. But the most important thing I'd like to draw your attention to is actually around his neck. We haven't mentioned it yet on the show. But one of the things I loved about Joaquin Andujar, he always wore like a big gold medallion, right? And that was on the outside. And he's bouncing around. He pitched, and like, can you see how it's flopped up? That's kind of in the air as he prepares to release a pitch. You can just see it hovering midair. Man, I think that's a great card. It's a great card. That face of determination. You know, when I got back into collecting a few years ago, I mean, it's been wonderful. I'm not going to lie to you. And I was like, everything everybody else wants, I wanted. And as I've gone on, I still want lots of those cards. I'm not going to say I don't, but I'm also really struck by the sameness. So many, it's like the same card over and over again. I mean, ultra modern, but I'm a vintage guy. I really also mean that for most of all, I mean that for vintage. That's what I'm seeing. So it just becomes a matter of deciding what I really want in those cards. I can't have them all. Honestly, I don't want them all. So one way I kind of broke the boredom of the sameness of most collecting is I created this all-star master set from the 84 game. Another way is I do have one specific focal point in vintage, and that's I'm collecting Willie Mays. And if you caught the bonus episode a couple days ago, I thought I had a double mail day, but it turned out I had a single mail day. The second was was a box of deodorants, but I did have that one beautiful Willie Mays. I showed you a 1957 Willie Mays in SGC3. And today I received that other mail day. So let's wrap it up with this one. 1955, a Bowman Willie Mays in a PSA 4. I just got this back from PSA today. What's funny is, we're like, oh yeah, you want a 6 serial or a 7 serial, but not always. Not always. This is a 2 in a new slab. Right? The one I bought in the auction, there was just a big old gash in the slab. And I didn't quite see it. I saw like other things, but I didn't quite see this big scratch in the slab. And I'm pretty good at looking at that up close and asking questions. I definitely was not lazy about it at all. They were high res scans, but sure enough. So send it to PSA. And I love this card, man. This is an underrated card, or underappreciated card, in my opinion. I really wanted to get one with good resolution. This one has a lot of blur in it. I love the crispness of Willie. And the other thing is this one's terrible centering in 55 Bowman, and it really shows off because of that television set design. Now, it's not perfect centering. You can see that it's a little bit left to right and a little bit bottom to top. But I can live with it. It's got beautiful clarity, and I'm super happy to have it. And that'll do it for me, friends. Thank you for tuning in to episode 7, You Never Know, of the Rated Rabbi podcast. I'll be back with a new one on Friday. And until then, may you be blessed and enjoy health and long life. Take care.